Hi, I want to start this episode with a free way that you can help us out. Usually we talk about the Patreon. Really, though, if you can just tell your friends or tweet about us or write about us on social media or message boards, just help spread the word. That would go a long way. We solely do this by word of mouth, and it would be cool to watch the show grow as we kind of get into the back half here. So yeah, just tell your friends or signal boost us on social media, all of that good stuff. Thanks. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. Do you ken it? My name is Cole Ross, and today I am joined by Autumn Greer.
Delighted to be here as always.
Welcome back. Welcome to the Wolves season.
This is where stuff gets really fun.
Yeah, this is crazy. I love this. So I'm very happy that you're on here because we are talking about kind of the first third of the section of the book called Telling Tales, which is a large amount of it is actually dedicated toward kind of following up on where Donald Callahan has been since the events of Salem's Lot. So it's fantastic to have you here since you were on that episode.
That way you can be assured that I'll get all of your deep cut jokes on Salem's Lot, huh?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about this a while back. During the Salem's Lot episode, just moving through a whole book, there are details that you skip over. I can't believe we skipped over Mr. Flip. That's entirely my fault. I don't think we talked about how Barlow straight up pulled an it and presented himself as Callahan's version of the boogeyman.
Huh.
Yeah, we straight up didn't talk about that. And this book doesn't talk about it either.
Oh, no, just anytime you miss like a kind of like flag name check kind of thing, that's flag name checks and 19 and 99. Those are the only three things you need to know about the series.
Yep. It just fake it. It's like faking playing the piano or being a wine taster. So this is your first episode of this season. How are you finding Wolves of the Calla this time?
Well, Wolves of the Calla is probably one of my top 3 books in this series, which I don't know. I think that says a lot. I'm having so much fun. Yeah.
And like I forget how many times had you done this one before? By done, I mean read.
This is probably my 4th or 5th time. Actually, maybe a little bit more, maybe 5th or 6th time reading this one. I probably read book 6 maybe twice, and I think I've only read book 7 once. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to 7 again. But 5 is also, I'm finding, very good because it is it's so different, right? Like you look at it and most of a lot of it is dialogue. We do get to the Carmel center of action, the Tootsie Roll center of, shooting wolves off of their gray horses. But like a lot of it is just the weirdness starting to spiral out of control and go almost entirely through like character work, right?
Absolutely. And I think he does such a good job. Our fearless author of blending all the different worlds together. Like this could have been a muddy mess. Mm-hmm. And he does such a good job of keeping the worlds separate and moving the plot along in between them.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get started and start talking about kind of Callahan's road or roads or worlds or Americas. Sorry, I glitched out there for a second. Talk about kind of where this goes. And this begins with more coincidences, although Susanna takes great pains to say coincidence is canceled. When last we left the group, they were agreeing to ride into town and start surveying it to make sure that it's even defensible. And Eddie is real worried because gulp, he's never ridden a horse before. He's going to look like a fool if he hops up on that there roan stallion or mare. Those are words, right? And falls over. But the coincidence is both he and Jake, both city boys through and through, they end up taken to horses like riding bicycles.
What a wonderful coincidence.
Yeah, they bring up the idea of past lives. Just that controlling this majestic beast and not being, I guess, kicked off and being thrown into a well is comes naturally to them, which is good. And more of this kind of sense of unreality and unease that Eddie feels at pretty much all points of the day now.
The idea of Arthur Eld banging his way through Brooklyn so he could sire Eddie really tickles me to death.
Is it like he's got a to-do list?
He's just rolling up into town.
To do.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that one is a freebie. And there's a little bit of a heartbreaking scene here with Jake, Benny, and Roland. Like, Jake has been denied a childhood, basically since, his parents were awful to him, but also since his new parent was awful to him by dropping him off of a railroad trestle. Jake wants to stay over with Benny Slightman, and Roland has a moment of like, oh my gosh, like, what have I done to this kid? Where, like, going and spending the night with your friend is something you feel awkward about asking about.
I love how Jake invokes the quartet to ask if he can have a sleepover. Like, he's like, may I please speak to you as Din? Like, he's so formal.
Just roll up to your dad with a PowerPoint proposal about how you should have breakfast for dinner tonight.
Yeah, and then Roland's so cute. Like, Roland is practically like, call me from the Slightmans as soon as you get there, and I want to see their number on the caller ID.
It's hard to tell if he's being genuine when he kind of like tries to comfort Jake, because what he says is like, oh, my teacher Court, he said, one eye sees flat. You have to have two eyes in different places to see things in their full dimension. Like, okay, so he's telling Jake, don't feel bad because by going and staying somewhere else, we're going to be over here with Callahan. You go stay with your friend. You're going to be able to like do extra recon for us. You're going to see the town from a different perspective. Like, that could very well just be Roland trying to like ease Jake into being a kid by saying, okay, you've got a huge mission. You need to stay up all night telling ghost stories with your friend and maybe eat way too much popcorn.
For somebody that, as you mentioned, dropped a kid off of a train trestle, he is a really good dad.
Yeah. And here, like, it is, terrible stuff is going to happen later. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Like, it is neat to get to see the entire quartet, not just Roland and Jake, kind of have, exist in this bastion of civilization and not just be on the road where the only thing we see Roland doing with Jake is putting him into danger. Right. Yeah.
It's funny. Roland mentioned how he's going to stop seeing him as the boy, or he's going to need to stop doing that. I have to imagine at this point, Jake's getting one of those, like, reedy little mustaches, and he probably smells terrible all the time. Yeah. He's got those little, like, dude hormones, Yeah.
Yeah, you have to grade on a curve because they're bathing in creeks, and Jake is, he is sleeping alongside what could charitably be called a raccoon. So, maybe he doesn't have an awful lot of assets, stink wise to begin with. Stink assets, we call them. So that's bittersweet. At least Jake gets to have his friend, for a little bit anyway. So basically, as they're getting into town, the town is also getting ready to receive them, both as a way to celebrate the presence of gunslingers, but also really to just get a sense for whether or not they're the real deal. The little plate show that they did before is not necessarily enough to convince everybody. Not everybody got a chance to see that, so they're throwing a big old party at the pavilion, and Roland says, hey, they're going to give you some graph. You're going to need to swap that out for some iced tea, like, right quick, though.
He's such a good dad. This is the exact advice a growing boy in your quartet needs.
You know what? You don't have to drink it. Just walk around carrying it. That way nobody gives you trouble, right? Just old teen party tricks.
I'm surprised that Roland didn't take him to the side and teach him how to do like a real quick waltz or something like that, just in case there's a little dancing.
Damn it, maggot! You got to put your hands on my lower on my back. Yeah, you know. Don't be afraid to get close to me, maggot. Yeah, you know. God, those were embarrassing times. Got to make sure you know how to
it's
slow
funny.
dance.
when you say maggot, of course, you're referencing Court. There is a line somewhere in this section where Court has some saying about how the one-eyed man sees this and the man with both eyes. Didn't Roland's bird scratch out one of Court's eyes?
Yeah. A little bit of dramatic irony in that.
Yeah, like if that was one of his branded sayings about the one-eyed man sees this, but the two-eyed man sees this. Like, sorry, bro, you just got downgraded pretty fierce.
And I think by the time Court died, he was blind as a bat too. I don't think he had any working eyes left at the end, so he was not even a king in the land of the blind. Unfortunately. We get a real picture of what Calla Bryn Sturgis looks like. It is described as being like paradise. Honestly, you just the amount of growth and the amount of just kind of civilization that's present here really puts Eddie back on his heels. And Eddie is our viewpoint character for a lot of this in the early going of this part.
He is, and it's I don't know. It's really cool seeing Eddie kind of come into his own in this section. Yeah. You know. A little bit later, we'll see Roland put him up for a speech. Like this is a really developmental, I guess, section for Eddie with some of the things we also see later with Roland and he conversing about Susanna.
Yeah, Eddie even kind of reflects on that too. Like this is a time, the first time since River Crossing where Eddie understands that Roland wasn't just, a sheriff or an executioner or any of these things. He was also a diplomat. And back at the camp, Eddie saw how Roland was manipulating them, and he really gets it's a bit of a confidence boost for him, actually understanding that there probably is a role for somebody whose primary skill is to talk, like Eddie is, with his high charisma score and what have you. He also later remarks on how ridiculous it is that everybody is looking at him with reverence as a gunslinger when, probably 6 months ago, he was sitting in his underwear, eating Cheerios eating Cheerios, watching cartoons and out of his mind on heroin.
Which sounds like a great day.
just a Saturday afternoon,
in your underpants, high on heroin, eating cereal.
Yeah, just does a body good. And Andy, I need to get your impressions on Andy too, because he has a real moment here.
Oh, Andy. We were just talking about characters that love to talk.
Yeah. Well, Andy's one of those people who, when he doesn't understand something, grinds everything to a halt too. Like just Eddie says, "Oh, I was just talking to myself," which is just a way to brush off and say, "Yeah, nothing going on here. Look away." Andy comes in and says, "Ah, yes, a person who talks to himself has a fool for a partner," or something, like a fool for a lawyer. Maybe, I don't know. Eddie calls him a snot or something like that. It says we've got a saying in Brooklyn, something about snot, and Andy just takes time in the conversation to define snot. Come on.
He's basically diagramming the sentence.
Yeah. Grow some tact, Andy. Also, maybe understand when people don't want the horoscope, please. Especially Susanna, who might not realize it consciously, but maybe she doesn't want to hear about the handsome man she's going to meet, or how she's going to have two ideas, one bad, one good, and you will have a dark-haired ... baby? Do you mean I'm going to have a dark-haired baby? Andy, what are you talking about?
This is the one time they should not have interrupted Andy.
Madam, you are positively glowing. Andy. Shaking your fist at him. But they get to the pavilion, and Eddie has the creeps. He believes that they're going to come and put them up on the Charyu tree right away. And the crowd gathers, and Overholser presents them to the crowd like they're just like specimens on display. A couple of notable things here. They make their introduction saying, et cetera, of the line of Veld, son of et cetera, and so on. Eddie, when prompted, says that they are of the quartet of 19, and Jake says we are the quartet of the 90 and 9. This comes out of nowhere, is unremarked upon, aside from, it's weird how I felt compelled to say that. That is going to be very important later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just like in this book, something that comes out being important is when they roll up to this party, there's a table with a big-ass feather on it.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, is basically just like Lord of the Flies. It's the shell that represents order, or it's Piggy's glasses. I hope nobody breaks Piggy's glasses.
Otherwise, we're fucked. Yeah, it's the Apotomax feather from the beginning of the book that they were passing around. Yeah, how adorable is it that Oi even bows and introduces himself to?
Probably one of the best moments in the book.
It's very good. I wish somebody had a cell phone camera so they could have taken a picture and then the dodo could have put it up with some ukulele music over it.
I would share the hell out of that video.
Oh, it would be very snackable content is what we call it. That is a snackable bumbler.
He even bows.
Yeah, just as like he does a little puts one foot in front of the other, like it's real tentative, but he's just following the lead. But maybe he knows. See that's the space that always like the husband who intentionally does a bad job washing the dishes. You know, you kind of maybe don't maybe he's slow walking it in order to have you stop asking, but like just there's that doubt there, and he maintains the right to surprise you irritatingly. Mm-hmm. You know what? I think I hate Oi now. No, I don't hate Oi.
Oh, we're off that. No more Oi.
It's the quickest turnaround. No, it's Oi remains delightful. Like we said earlier, Roland puts Eddie on as the spokesman, which is probably the right call. Although it is hilarious when one of the townspeople, George Telford, kind of like implies that Eddie is stealing valor a little bit and says like, "Oh, have you ever even shot those guns?" And just thinking about like killing people in cold blood and Lud, the look on his face makes Telford like back up and call him gunslinger. Like, you know, even in the face of that skepticism, like Eddie is enough. You know, Eddie's demeanor is enough to prove like, yeah, we are steel.
This is another really good moment for Eddie too. Like he's just finished giving like a big speech, kind of winning the townspeople around a little bit, mm-hmm. like kind of being the opening MC, like warming the crowd up.
How's everybody doing tonight? Yeah, and he's jealous too. Like he's like, oh gosh, I've got to talk to old Whitey here while everybody else gets to talk to all these fascinating people. But no, like, and they're listening to good music. They've got banjos and mandolins out there. It's real good. There's even a little bit of like show and tell. Callahan gets up and sings an Irish bar song.
Yes, Susanna sings too. I wasn't as familiar with that Maid of Constant Sorrow song. I kept a second. I'm like, wait, that's not the song from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I had to go listen to it.
Isn't it? I think it is. It's similar, right? Yeah. Okay.
I was like, is that the same thing? That's a whole different gender.
Yeah. Just mix it up. Do one of the two. I think it's a folk song. We sang that in choir at one point. We did a whole Oh Brother, Where Art Thou medley. Because I went to high school in the early 2000s, so I guess that's in band we played a Shrek medley, and in choir we did Oh Brother, Where Art Thou.
Wow, this is a killer episode of Glee, huh?
I know, right? It's very misguided. But yeah, like everybody's everybody's feeling it, right? The performances are good. And Roland gets up and he jumps the gun before anybody can say like, now we got to get these gunslingers out of here. He just straight up does the thing and asks the first two questions. The whole, do you understand what we're here for? Do you need aid and succor, et cetera, as the town fathers look on in horror. And then he says, you know what? You can't stop me. Everybody's going to love me because I'm going to dance the Kamala.
And dance it he does.
So this is, I don't know how to feel about the Kamala, honestly. It is lovingly described. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, has any author ever worked harder to make it sound like this is like rap music?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's Eddie, you know, we're getting this from Eddie's point of view, and Eddie is like listening to Roland pound out this beat, you know, with his boots on the stage, right? Doing this dance and kind of singing along this rapid fire, syncopated, repetitive song, you know, come Kamala, rise Kamafala. You know, they're just basically this like folk dance and folk song about that is simultaneously about a good rice harvest and also just spraying jizz. Yeah,
it kind of sounds like Roland is river dancing to the Yin Yang Twins.
That's a very apt comparison. River dance is a very close one because it is like something between like line dancing and like a tap routine is what Eddie refers to it as, and the crowd is into it, like they're shouting come like on the beat as he's doing it.
I guess in keeping with the rap thing, it's like that David Banner like song Play, right? Come, Roland, I'm trying to get your body wet.
Yeah. He's just going for it. I don't know how I feel about Clint Eastwood dancing a jig while everybody shouts jizz, jizz, jizz. Like it's a folk thing, right? You know, Roland knows this from his days way back when. Like the idea of a bountiful harvest, and also just like the general notion of fertility and growth and new life and all of that, like that as a connection. This is laid out incredibly bare. There are several pages dedicated to describing this dance, and I think it is just incredibly goofy.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's kind of like the movie Footloose, and Roland's the Kevin Bacon. You know, the wolves didn't want anybody dancing in this town.
Nope. But he's going to come and revive their spirit. He's going to make them want to fight just to preserve those dancing feet. We finally have something. We have something to fight for. He just gets down and says, "Who's going to top that if you're all dead?" And he does like a little tap routine. I really shouldn't have slammed my foot on the floor because my downstairs neighbor's probably trying to sleep. But he's like, yeah, and just like off he goes, like your move. Like, well, I guess we have to fight now.
You know, Roland is like, he's like a Justin Timberlake type of figure. He's like a triple threat. He can dance, he can shoot, and I guess he can act.
When he wants to, yeah. Yeah. So this is a very memorable scene. It's not like the fact that it's goofy means it's bad, but like every time that I come to this, I think, okay, maybe I'm going to see it from a different angle, you know, in a different light with everything else. And, you know, the notion of, you know, Ariza and Kamala, like those things pop up after this. Really, aside from the fact that this is a farming community, there really is no basis for them to like linger on this idea as much as they do.
Hey, I mean, they can't help it. The Kamala slaps.
Yep. But this, like, it puts everybody over their edge. They're just, you know, rapturous, and it goes probably as far as anything to making them accept these gunslingers, you know, because, you know, any number of cultural reasons around it. So good on him, I guess. He made the right move.
I don't know. It seems like he caused some early onset dry twist.
Yeah.
I mean, he was fine until he danced, and now his whole body's gonna fall apart.
Yeah. Instead of dancing so well, he cured a sick kid. He took the sickness into himself. Yeah. Like the Green Mile. So we'll talk about the dry twist here in a second, but there's a little bit of a cliffhanger. There's a seed that's planted. Callahan takes the tet, and Susanna shares a piece of trivia that she found from one of the party guests. Zalia Jafford's old, I think, grandfather, who's still alive and is senile as fuck, claims to have seen a wolf and killed one himself I think like two wolf attacks ago, something like that, like 70 years ago. So we're going to come to that.
And I mean, for this world, that is so old. Like Methuselah old. Like, everybody in this world has got to die by 40.
Oh yeah, like they're dying of fear for sure. Yeah. So it is it is definitely something remarkable, and nobody really believes that it's going to be true, but he ends up providing really good information. So good on him. Good on you, Pa Jaffords.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Takes us into the chapter called Dry Twist. And we haven't really talked about this. Like in the past 2 episodes, it was just an incidental detail. And it's something that, Roland, that was never talked about at length until right now. But Roland has been kind of wincing in pain at weird times. And in his mind, he is resigned to the fact that he has something called a dry twist, like a kind of progressive arthritis that he can play off as rheumatism for a little bit, but it is a pain that is in his lower back, his hip, and his leg that will probably incapacitate him within a year.
There's that talking about in there, like, he's worried he might have to be carried to the tower. That would be a pretty cute picture with like Susanna riding Roland, riding Eddie. Like Eddie's just slogging everybody to the tower in their little harnesses.
We managed to offload all of the traveling labor to one Brooklyn kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And his legs are shredded.
He's got some pillars on him is what he's got. Oh man.
Yes.
So fortunately, Callahan's housekeeper, Rosalita Munoz, not only is horny for Roland because of, dancing the Kamala so well, she also has a concoction, a little bit of folk medicine, that's part peppermint and part, I think, bile from rock cats out in Thunderclap. Or is it piss? I forget.
But, oh, no, it is absolutely like a bile stone or something, but think about it. Isn't that what you would say if it was really wildcat urine?
It's like Rocky Mountain oysters. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it just sounds better saying, oh, it's just a little bit of bile. It's urine. He said it has a funky smell.
Yeah, and he's skeptical that it's going to work, but Rosalita says, oh, come back here, and I'm going to have to ask you to strip naked so I can rub this on you. And it works. It works great. That mountain lion piss it works wonders. That's not carrot juice. That's king's piss.
Yeah. Excellent reference.
Yeah. So this helps out, and also, how great is it that Roland gets to have a sweetheart?
This is the first time we've seen Roland have sex and not have anybody get set on fire.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I think Rosalita survives to the end of the book where she encounters Roland.
Nice.
How remarkable is that?
You go, girl.
You can get it. That's great. Yeah. So that ameliorates the problem for now, but it is by no means a permanent solution. They're just up against so many clocks, right? They've got so many different pressures bearing down, and they're not the only people who are saying that, like, oh, it seemed like time didn't exist for forever, but now it feels realer than ever, right? I think even Callahan says that. We ought to talk about Roland breaking the news to Eddie.
I have to say, I've read this book. I think I said I've read this book 6 times. Every time I forget that Eddie doesn't lose it.
Yeah.
Like, Eddie's like, well, I figured from the swollen breasts, that something was weird.
Yeah. And he's more confused than anything because, she's had her period. And Roland offers a solution that, like, that would probably, when she's carrying a demon baby, that probably, probably adds up. You can't really expect how things are going to work. He's more just confused than anything, and offers a little bit of, if he's reproachful, it's not because Roland has kept this for so long. It is because Roland expects him to keep it from Susanna.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, I have to say I'm a little I don't know how Eddie gets it done. I'm pretty uncomfortable with that. Like I know Jeremy listens to this podcast. Jeremy, if you listen to this episode, please tell me if I am pregnant with a monster baby. Don't keep it from me.
It is worthwhile information.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to know early. You know, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm pregnant with a monster baby, and everybody knows but me. Fantastic.
Yeah, it seems like something you should plan for. You know, there are contingencies.
Like, I know Mia's scrappy, but you can't just like while she's sleeping, manacle her or something, and then just drop the news.
Saying, all right, so you're probably a little confused right now. All of us have come to this conclusion.
Like, I know she has legs and she's fast, but I mean, you can get the jump on her.
Yeah, I mean, like she's pretty deadly when it comes to frogs, but we're at least, I don't know, 3 times as big as a frog. I think we have an advantage here, a marked advantage. Yeah. So that's the other thing too. I talked about wanting a plan, wanting to run contingencies. Eddie's thoughts about this are very practical, which are like, all right, so we've got the rose coming, we've got et cetera, et cetera. Now we have this. Who knows if she pops tomorrow? Like, we have no idea what to expect. It seems like everybody should be on the same page so we know what to do, you know, so that we're not fighting the wolves when she decides to go into labor in earnest, right?
Yeah. There's a moment in there where Eddie asks Roland to, you know, swear that he'll do everything he can for Susanna. And then Roland's like, yes, absolutely. And then in his mind, he pictures Jake falling into the abyss.
just feeling, first off, picturing Jake falling into the abyss while the theme from Curb Your Enthusiasm plays in the background. Bum, bum, bum. But also feeling incredibly grateful that that Eddie wasn't there, because Eddie would never trust Roland again if he saw that with his own eyes.
Yeah, that's something that sticks in your brain tape.
Little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But this adds more weight and more stress onto the kind of the fabric of the quartet, right? Just the idea that, hey, we're starting to keep secrets from each other. You know, notwithstanding the fact that Roland is keeping a bigger secret from them, which is, you know, he is in tremendous pain all the time and is probably going to need to be carried to the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all bad. They've got a lot of timers on the old Echo there going on. Ready to pop.
As they say, shit's getting real.
Absolutely. As we get into the priest's tale, New York is the subtitle for this. They're waiting for the some twins to come over to help draw a map of the town so they can plan. And before Callahan will show them Black 13, he basically needs to tell his story, right? It feels like it's part of the way things ought to go. And we go back to well before even the events of Salem's Lot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
In Salem's Lot, Callahan was really disaffected, right? He was a fine priest to the people of the town, but also was very kind of disillusioned with where faith had gone, right? You know, his whole hang up about we've replaced actual demons with social demons, etc. But in the intervening time, he has realized, oh no, all of that was because I was drunk. I wasn't actually like disappointed with the church. I just was too blinded by the booze to actually be well adjusted.
I thought that was a really cool kind of moment for that character.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously now with a little bit of space from where he was, I mean, he can kind of put that together. But my dude was a mess before, during, and after Salem's Lot. It was a mess.
Yeah, and finally now that his only pressing concern is the ultimate artifact of all evil that can drop him through tearing the fabric of reality at the drop of a pin. Now that that's his only concern, he actually has the perspective he needs to gain clarity on things.
You know, there was a little throwaway line earlier in the book when they were talking about, you know, what he had, where he mentions that he's traveled to different places, and he mentions the small town in Mexico called Los Zapatos, which is absolutely the town that Ben Mears and the boy were in Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
What a weird place for Callahan to just go.
Yeah, for him to for him to just pop up.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was before or after, because Callahan eventually he went to Ben Mears' funeral. So I wonder if he went to that funeral and learned and learned about kind of where they had been before they decided to go back.
He's probably like, if there was one good priest there, maybe I should go talk to that guy and get some clarity.
Yep.
You're saying the priest was helpful.
Yeah. So this is really strange. I want to get your opinion on where this little cutaway comes from, because this definitely feels like Stephen King had an outline for what he wanted the sequel to Salem's Lot to be. Like, he was fascinated with Callahan's character, and had in the intervening time kind of gone through his own battle with addiction. Like, all of this feels like something that was born out couldn't have actually been its own story, and he worked it into the greater Tower cycle.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I think that the most fascinating thing about it was the concept of just being unclean. Like, once that blood, and I think he described it as a mealy, spoiled apple taste, and he started drinking again to try to get rid of that taste after he was forced to drink that type 1 vampire's blood in the previous book. Like, it's the church door burning his hands, like always having that taste in his mouth. I mean, the imagery is fantastic.
Yeah. Have you read Dr. Sleep?
I have, and I'm glad you bring that up, because this feels very, very similar to me. I mean, that's what we see with older Danny, and even sometimes when we're seeing some of the dead and everything like that. I mean, I definitely catch a Dr. Sleep vibe from Callahan's post Salem's Lot life.
Yeah, I just because they both so heavily depend on kind of AA culture, and also like Callahan being on the highways and kind of being plugged into. I mean, in his case, it's supernatural. The roads that he's traveling on, but kind of being plugged into and seeing just things that otherwise would fall beneath notice. The signs. Well, and
they both find good guys who get it, who aren't afraid to give a drunk a job.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I like Dr. Sleep quite a bit. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know about it as a sequel to The Shining, but it was a good book.
Absolutely.
And I hadn't read that before. Basically, this is the first time that I've read Wolves of the Calla since I read Dr. Sleep. So like the similarities really, really stick out. Yeah. So Callahan retells, his part of the climax of Salem's Lot, talking about losing his battle of faith with Barlow and being forced to drink his blood. I don't think in the book, Callahan thinks, "Oh, I need a drink," and then Barlow gives it to him. I think that's a little bit of an embellishment that was brought in here. I didn't have time to research that. There might be other details that don't line up as well, but I think everything is here to serve the fact that, the church has rejected him. The very idea, his very being is unclean. So he gets on the bus, pays way too much for booze, and then goes off to New York City.
I thought it was a nice touch, speaking of little synergies, that Eddie just so happens to have read Ben Mears' book. He's like, "Oh yeah, Air Dance. I read that back in my when."
Yep.
That was a freebie. So you know exactly the author I'm talking about. Fantastic.
Yeah,
what a coincidence.
This will save us some time. Weirdly enough, this also, I mean, it brings forward a possibility that Eddie is from the level of the tower where Callahan is from, because they share an author in common. Either that, or there are multiple Ben Mears, and this one decided to write Air Dance.
It just seems a little bit on the nose, because I don't know if Eddie was a big reader, but I'd imagine when you're super addicted to heroin and running drugs for Balthazar, you don't get a lot of time to read prize-winning books by.
Well, he's when you're a mule, you spend a lot of time on planes, right? So you got a lot of time to kill there. Additionally, like, if I remember correctly, Air Dance and basically all of Ben Mears' books are really, really tawdry as well. And so, and so there's definitely an element of like, oh yeah, Eddie definitely read this because he heard there was some, there was some real killer sex going on. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. We also learned that the cross on Callahan's head didn't come from Barlow. It came from a run-in with the Hitler brothers, but that comes later. They were about to carve a swastika on his forehead, but he stopped them and ended up with a cross. You know, like you do, not a Windows 95 logo, like you should turn every swastika into if you see it. Yeah, carry some markers around, fix up those swastikas, make them something less hateful. So Callahan ended up working at a shelter, a wet shelter, called Home, that was actually near the vacant lot over by the UN. Wet shelter meaning that it is one of the few shelters in New York where people were allowed to be drunk. It wasn't exactly encouraged. You know, instead of locking up the people who were drunk, they locked up the booze and gave people access to it, as they needed it for their DTs, etc. And that's kind of where Callahan found his place, was kind of working in the recovery industry, at this place that is led by Rowan Magruder, somebody's named Rowan Magruder, who comes up later. But Callahan is primarily working with somebody whose name is Lupe ... Delgado. That's Susan's last name.
Oh no. And he's also very attractive.
Yep. People out there maybe write in. It's my impression that Lupe is a woman's name, but this Lupe is a man, and Callahan has feelings for him. Like, he straight up comes out and says, like, "Oh yeah, I was in love with Lupe." Like, that probably seems weird. You know, everybody has these notions about priests. There was never anything physical beyond, you know, a single kiss, but just this person was very special to me, which makes what happened to him all the more tragic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is in the 70s, so the next beat here is going to make a little bit more sense, specifically about AIDS. But Callahan is at a movie watching a revival of some Clint Eastwood westerns, and he hears the chimes. He doesn't know what they are yet, but he hears some chimes, and he starts seeing people glow. Barlow's blood has given him the sight. He's able to kind of see things for what they are, and he is specifically seeing the energy and kind of the fingerprint of what he calls type 3 vampires.
The classification system has always been pretty interesting for me with the Stephen King vampires.
Yeah.
I mean, it's elegant. I haven't really seen it represented anywhere else. I mean, the explanation seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, so I expected that to have been a thing even as far back as Salem's Lot. Like, it's not, though. It's not as rigidly defined there. You have Barlow, who is the mastermind, and you have kind of the mindless secondary vampires who are below it. This is this is a very studied observation of the different ways that vampires can articulate in fiction, and also a cold-blooded analysis of Callahan's victims, because Callahan goes full vampire hunter after this.
Oh yeah. He even gets like some cool black combat boots, like or like biker boots or something. Like,
yeah. To give a rundown for anybody who has forgotten the specifics, type 1 vampires are kind of the overlord vampires. They're very rare, probably about a dozen of them in the world. Barlow is one of them. Type 1 vampires make type 2 vampires, which are kind of more close to the undead. They live they're basically mindless, and they live very short, violent lives after they are turned. When they bite somebody, they turn them into a type 3, who is able to live something of a normal life. They have, they can subsist on food and things like that. But they're basically mosquitoes. Like, they go around and kind of live a little bit of a degenerate life and feed on people. These are the people that Callahan can see. And they're also the people that Callahan ends up hunting down.
It sounds like a 1 or a 3 are the way to go, because they say the 2s tend to burn out too quickly.
Yeah, well, like just the way they say it, like he describes it like an epidemiologist. Like, oh yeah, like a bunch of 2s will pop up, in a short span of time around each other, cause a lot of chaos, and then go away. But 3s last basically forever and ever after they've kind of been initiated, right? And the thing that makes this, necessary to be set in the late 70s and early 80s. Remember, Callahan left our world in 1983. Is the fact that these vampires are a vector for AIDS, which is horrifying. There's a little bit of back and forth on like, oh, they settled on calling it names. There were a bunch of names for it before I left. Callahan is also aghast that that people started calling that the phrase "gay" took hold for homosexuals. But then again, people out of time,
and we have to work out how the timing gap works with like different phrases and things, but only for races, sexual orientations. Like no one ever says, wow, we don't say bebop, we say this. It's always about a slur or a
I need to make sure that I am as current as possible when I denigrate somebody. That's the thing. That's what you have to be concerned about.
Stephen King wants us to know that every 10 years, something that you say is no longer the appropriate term when it comes to someone's identity,
Yeah, fashions change. Although I thought it was very funny that Callahan said, oh, when I hear AIDS, I think of a diet candy, which was totally a thing. Like back in the 70s, it was AIDS. You can look it up.
Really?
Yeah, there was a diet candy, like a weight loss candy called AIDS that obviously had to change its name, but it never really bounced back because of the association with a terrible disease that affected millions of people and still does today.
God, I hope the AIDS family is doing okay now.
Yeah, who knows? Candle that burns twice as bright. I think maybe they sold enough candy to get it to break into another business.
Yeah, now they do contracting for the military, right?
I think so, yeah.
Ever since the AIDS candy didn't work out, it's time to, build weapons.
Yeah, just manufacturers that just get bought out by Lemerck, part of the Sombra family of products. So Callahan, like we said, has fallen in love with Lupe, and he's shocked, when he goes out behind home one day and sees him being bitten by type 3s, being fed on. Callahan is so outraged by this, and was like, what in the fuck are you doing? He goes up and stabs the vampire in the back. And when you kill a vampire, all that's left is clothes, teeth, and hair.
What a freak. You're going to murder somebody.
See, he still finds a way to complain about it. Like he's really like, okay, well, how the fuck am I getting rid of these teeth and these teeth and this hair? He's like, okay, count yourself lucky you don't have to get rid of a grown ass man's body.
Yeah. I mean, what a freebie if you just hit someone in the back with a cleaver and they literally just disappear.
Yeah, they're just like they Obi-Wan Kenobi down into a pile of clothes, and you get to keep the clothes. Like, this is how he clothed himself. So
he's got those nice bally loafers.
Yeah, well, he had to donate those, but he got some really durable biker boots after that. Yeah. Shortly after this, though, Lupe dies of AIDS. He watches this happen, goes and visits, like he's in an oxygen tent in the hospital. It's just really, really bad news because they don't know what to do about it. And just going through that ordeal makes him want a drink. And what seals the deal is going properly todash and seeing the vagrant dead. He goes into a bar and says, hey, I think you've been keeping something for me for the past, 6 months or what have you. It's a bunch of Bushmills. Can you pour me a double? And that's where he falls off of the wagon.
And Stephen King did a really good job here because there's a moment with Lupe's funeral where you think that he's not going to fall off the wagon because the guy that runs the shelter is like, hey, if you fall off the wagon, it's going to be like pissing in his face.
Yeah.
And you don't think it's going to happen. And then, oh man, does he slide.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for years and years, and the way he puts it is, even with all of that, he never gave up. He says like, yeah, I pissed in Lupe's face, but at least I didn't, drop trow and do the other thing. Like, I was like, okay, that's a little bit of justification there. You definitely relapsed. But he goes into a cycle. Like he goes into this rhythm of, working, long days at temporary labor firms. I love the names of these places, like Brawny Man. So, but yeah, it's like a day laborer. And then, some days he drinks and the next day he sleeps it off. Then he goes out and hunts type 3s. And this is how he keeps himself clothed while he, sleeps on the streets.
It's interesting. I don't know if it's 2 times or 3 times that we see Callahan sleeping under newspapers. The dude loves sleeping under newspapers.
He saw a bunch of other people doing it and said, well, why not? When in Rome, when in Lud. Yeah.
When in Lud is perfect.
Yeah, so he goes into this until he notices that the eye is upon him. He starts noticing some really unsettling things, during his hunts. He comes back and he finds some graffiti near his favorite bench where he sleeps, saying like, oh, he sleeps here. He has gray hair. Or he sleeps here. He has a burned hand. And then he starts seeing lost dog posters put up describing, oh, our Irish setter, he has a mangled paw, and he responds to the name like Caladin or something like that. Like they have it like almost right, but it's enough to say like, oh, somebody is after me.
These signs and the graffiti are so creepy and malevolent. Like it's so wrong. I mean, I think that this really works.
Oh, it's paranoia. It's paranoia fuel. Just the idea that, you can't go on killing monsters forever until maybe they take notice and start coming back at you. But just to see the evidence of people like triangulating your location and following your routes and stuff like that, knowing that they have not just the ability and wherewithal to, track you down, but also that they are right on your heels. I would run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's not the vampires that are after him, even though it's the vampires that he has been killing. They are something called the Low Men. The Low Men in yellow coats, which are making kind of a return appearance from the short story The Low Men in Yellow Coats from Hearts in Atlantis. Yeah, I need to so I've never seen that movie, Hearts in Atlantis, where they pop up. It is ridiculous to think that there is just a Dark Tower movie with Sir Anthony Hopkins in it.
I feel like I've definitely seen that, but I don't have any room to talk because I've never read Black House. Okay. And obviously huge Dark Tower fan. I'm just waiting for it to come up.
Oh yeah.
In the podcast.
Oh, it's coming. It'll be during book 7, I believe, is where it is poised. Yeah. But we're going to learn more about these low men. What we should know for right now is they tend to wear yellow raincoats. They're sometimes called the Regulators. They have permanent red eye, like they looked into the camera flash. When the picture was being taken, and they tend to drive around in kind of gaudy, oversized cars. They tend to pick whatever the most ridiculous car is. And they are servants of the Crimson King. We have heard tell of the Crimson King before this, when they went to Topeka, and they saw the graffiti about the walking dude, etc. There was also a sign saying, all hail the Crimson King, with the king's mark. Turns out the king has a castle over there in Endworld beyond Thunderclap. And Callahan says, if you're going that way, you are definitely going to have to deal with him.
It's amazing that they're this close to the king's castle.
Oh yeah. I think Callahan even says at one point he went todash there and he was lucky to get out alive.
Wow.
Yeah. No, but it is pretty close, and we're going to be getting pretty well acquainted with the Crimson King here in a little bit. I'm way into him. I'm way into the whole mythology around him that is presented here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But by going around and killing these vampires, he has raised the Crimson King's ire. Brought his attention down on him as somebody who has to go. So the vampires are at least somewhat linked to the forces of evil, the forces of the red here. So with the low man on his heels, he decides, hey, I'm going to leave New York. And he leaves on this footbridge across the Hudson River, this kind of ancient wooden footbridge that I think still had cattle troughs on the side of it. That had his bicentennial repairs done in 1975 by Limerick Industries. He goes across it and he ends up exiting the bridge, leaving the bridge in a different world. Spiro Agnew is president, which makes very little sense, but we are not in a position to talk about who it makes sense to be president. So
there was one part where the bottom of a newspaper was in Cyrillic, and I'm like, yep, this is definitely the worst timeline.
Yep. Like the bottom headline is in Cyrillic, and also like they're talking about terraforming the moon. Has it really gotten that bad? Do we have to go up there and make Earth 2? That seems really close, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't seem like we're gonna get away from it quick enough if we just go to the moon. We gotta think bigger.
I'm afraid we're gonna look over at any moment and see just the Statue of Liberty's hand coming out of the beach. You know,
just close your eyes for a minute. I'm just gonna take a nap. Oh, what could happen? So. But this is great. Like he thinks, okay, well, I've been through an awful lot, after all the stuff in Salem's Lot, after killing, untold numbers of vampires in New York. I never questioned my sanity, but like when I'm checking my wallet and noticing that every time I cross this bridge, the precedence on the currency change, and also the name of the town on the other side of the bridge changes. Like this is the first time he actually questions his sanity. Even after going like properly todash, right?
I'd imagine that looking down and seeing President Chadbourne on the $10 bill.
Who's Chadbourne?
We gotta get these Chads off our bills.
Oh, the Chadbourne versus the Virgin Bond. Maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know who this Chadbourne guy is, and Callahan is properly flummoxed because it came out of nowhere, a real outsider. Everybody was just tired of this inside baseball up in DC. You got to get Chadbourne in there. Chadbourne 76 or 80, I don't know. Lots of goofiness with the president until finally Callahan just decides, well, it doesn't matter if it is the safe world. He calls it the safe world. Or a different one, like I need to get out, I need to move on. And what he stumbles onto in these alternate realities is kind of a natural form of todash. It is not necessarily brought on by the chimes, but existing in almost like a negative space, what he calls the highways in hiding, where moving from place to place also kind of takes you into and out of a reality, similar to like passing through the Thinny on the Kansas Turnpike. Like happened to book 4, right?
I love this section of the book. I think he does such a good job of conveying the wanderlust. I mean, just the kind of monotonous. I mean, there's no joy in what Callahan's doing. He's just surviving and just moving in a straight line forward.
Yeah. Like he has a little bit of a base across the bridge. He sets up as a short order cook, but his boss, decides like, hey, you make a damn fine Monte Cristo. However, I also notice you've got something. You told me you didn't have anything. You've got itchy feet. You've got the wanderlust. And when he decides to move on, like it's just kind of tacitly understood that, somebody who is carrying around Callahan's baggage is not going to stay in the same place for very long. I'm tempted to like make a comparison to the Incredible Hulk at this point. But that I don't actually want to diminish how cool this is by like making it into a goof.
You would also not like Callahan when he's angry, right?
No.
Is that the Hulk or is that somebody else?
Yeah, that's definitely the Hulk. Callahan, when he's angry, he's really perfected the art of killing somebody with one single stab into the base of their neck. So that's his MO, and I happen to like the section at the bottom of my neck where my spine gets into the rest of my body. So I will give Callahan a wide berth. But yeah, like this section, you know, there's not a lot to remark upon because it is kind of a litany of, you know, towns and locations that he's gone to, temporary day labor firms that he's worked for. You know, he drinks so much that he eventually spends, I think, like 7 hours vomiting, and he decides, all right, that's going to be it. And go ahead.
But the section moves so well. Like, I think this is some of the best writing in the book.
Yes.
Besides when they first see the rose earlier.
Yes. They're both very similar sections too, because they are presented almost as montage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But he swears off the booze and keeps on moving whenever he feels like the low men are on his tail. He is almost picked up by some that like are driving by at 70 miles per hour, but slow down. Until he works his way all the way across the country to Sacramento. And he's working for a terrible boss, who just happens to throw a newspaper at him. And there's an article on the front page article about home, which in the intervening years since he left has become a real famous place. Like Mother Teresa ended up, visiting there. They were on the cover of Newsweek. However, they're on the cover of this national newspaper because Rowan Magruder, he's in critical condition because of a run-in with the Hitler brothers. They found him and basically beat him to within an inch of his life. And, it's very realistic that he could die.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the call for Callahan to return back to New York. And that's where the story ends for now. We're not going to find out how he gets Black 13, even though the telling of the story is very much about, like the point of the story is Black 13. But we've kind of learned a little bit more about the depths that Callahan went to, right?
Absolutely. It's having this additional insight of the character. I mean, Stephen King probably could have skated by with just being like, oh, here's a guy, he's a fallen priest, he did something with vampires, whatever. Yeah. But to take the time and really flesh this character and his story out, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And even though it is a protracted flashback to a different character's or to a different book's character, it really fits in pretty well, because he has integrated into the Calla so well, and he is out of place here, just like, 3/5 of our main characters. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So the kids did good. They drew a good map. Roland has to disappoint them by folding it in half. Even though paper is sacred. I love that they define blasphemy for him. When he says, okay, this is going to look like blasphemy. Do you know what that is? Yes, it's the desecration of a sacred object. Yep. Okay, there we go. Fold. And Callahan takes them in for their first glimpse of Black 13. Not really a glimpse. They make Susanna stay outside because they're really afraid of what's going to happen. They don't want that black bowling ball to supercharge her demon baby. But they get to, he pulls it out of its little compartment below. It's in a ghostwood box. And they can feel it. I really should have written down the line, but Eddie can even hear it, like, calling out to him and warning him, saying like, hey, the only reason you're standing on firm ground right now is because I'm asleep. And because, I've decided to not fling you into the abyss right now. And this is the first time we've really gotten a sense of how terrible its power is.
Yeah, this is not a good ball.
No. And Roland's already thinking, all right, well, we got to put it in that bowling bag, but how are we going to transfer it without waking it up and being sent to nothingness?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Also noteworthy is the fact that the ghostwood box has some markings on it. There is the word unfound written in the high speech. And also 3 symbols. There is a key, there is a stone, and there is an unfound door. No, there's a rose, there's a stone, and an unfound door. There we go. Is what's on here, and that is a kind of an allusion to a book, Look Homeward, Angel. We're going to talk more about kind of what that means and what that entails when a little bit more of the twist of the final series is revealed a little bit. But it is alluding that there's some kind of link between Black 13, the door that they're looking for, and the rose that represents the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This book rules.
It's so good. Yeah. So next time we are going to continue the telling tales portion. They're going to continue putting their plans together while Callahan unspools the latter part of his story. We're going to get acquainted with some really badass ladies who throw sharpened plates like they're James Bond villains, which is pretty cool. Just a bunch of good stuff. Autumn, any final thoughts about this section?
I can't wait. Just like always, I just want to go straight through until the end of the book. Like, we'll just record until about, maybe 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll just plow ahead.
Yeah. I'll try to edit out the loopiness. So we'll record for about 12 more hours, get 4 hours of usable content out of it. Because I'm very sleepy. But yeah, it's hard to stop myself from just continuing to plow through. I have to keep pace with the show, or else I forget things.
Yep.
Yeah. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Mrs. Greer. That's MISSUS Greer. You can also find me on the Duckfeed Slack and the Radio Free Midworld channel.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. You can find me at Cole Ross on Twitter. Watch my streams. I stream horror video games on the weekends at twitch.tv/DuckFeed.tv. That's usually in the evenings on Friday and Saturday. And check me out on the other shows here on Duckfeed.tv. Otherwise, though, the usual stuff you can do. Most of all, we want to see you again next week as we continue Wolves of the Calla. Until we see you, though, I want you to have long days and pleasant nights.